Hello and welcome to our panel discussion tonight here in the business stage with my friends Craig Park, Randy Tritz, and Joey D'Angelo to talk about conference room technology. And Joey has his Maverick helmet on. He's really on a fighter jet joining us live. And you know, they say don't drink and drive, don't Zoom and Zoom is I think the suggestion here. But we're going to have a great panel discussion. I'm going to be kind of throwing out some topics and throwing it more of a round robin. But more than anything, we're going to just dive into this new modern world of conference room technology. Where do we go from here? Post-COVID-19, there's questions about germs. There's questions about will employees even come back to the office? And if they do, what is that going to look like? And how do we enable all the employees who aren't going to be coming back into the conference room to be able to participate with those who are in the meeting? So thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Michael.
You bet.
Maybe we'll start with this, if you don't mind. You are involved in major markets and you work with the biggest names in business. Maybe you can we'll start with Craig, but I'd like to go around. Can you give us just a quick 30-second to a minute kind of synopsis of sort of where are we at? What are your customers talking with you about today? Your clients, what is the need of the hour? What's keeping you most busy?
Well, you know, it's interesting because it's only been, 3 or 4 months since life changed. And if we talked about what our clients were talking about in December, it's a completely different conversation than what we're having today. In December, we were talking about standards-based design, a common user experience no matter where they were, nationally or globally, and the issue of connection and video was less important than the ability to have an effective meeting in the room. The conversation today is how do we connect a whole bunch of now home-based members of our organization together in a seamless way, using the tools, whatever they be. And a lot of our client organizations we're already standard on a software codec platform. So it's how do we make that experience better? So a lot of advice on how to make the home office work better. Except for, well, actually Joey's office, when he turns off his video, is actually very much like Randy's office or mine if I turn mine off, or yours, Michael. And how do we make sure that the quality of both the sound and the video is good and that we can connect? Once you get past that, it's really now about what kind of collaboration tools can we build in to gain consensus. The kinds of things that we do in-person meetings are much harder to do, as much as I like video as a meeting tool, than you do sitting around a conference table, looking at a set of drawings or talking about a particular group's functional needs and how technology supports that. So it's a different world, and I wish I could say there's no easy answer. A lot of it depends on how long can we hold out until the time when normal becomes something that looks like the old normal.
I think going along with where Craig was too, the exact same discussion, but there's another dimension that adds to that looks at the touchless environment, the friction-free environment. For those that are physically in the space, because offices are starting to reopen. Yep. And then in addition to that, how do we really reuse the spaces that we have and make them more efficient in terms of social distancing or work distancing? The small collaboration rooms, 2 to 4 people, that discussion changes completely now. You can't put 2 to 4 people shoulder to shoulder in one of those small collaboration rooms. So the large boardroom now becomes inefficient because you can't put 30 people around that. It's got to be 15. So what do you do with the others involved? So there's a whole mix of things that look beyond the physical and beyond the remote, if you will, and kind of combines the two together. It's a difficult scenario, though.
I'm sorry, Joe, we have to ask your opinion on this. I know you just love the COVID-19 conversation and how that's going to affect conference room technology.
Well, I mean, what we've seen with all of our clients, some of them have, tens of thousands of rooms across the world, is they're pulling chairs out of the conference rooms. And in all of the renderings and the drawing packages we do, they're having us pull chairs out of the models. And they're making moves to, have 50 to 60% of their workforce be work from home. But because they're pulling chairs out of stuff and spreading people out, 50% of the people at home, 50% more space in the office, it's a net zero type thing. No projects have been canceled or stopped. No projects have been majorly redesigned. So, we're still seeing construction continue. My whole thing is I've always had this term, the software codec of the month club. You could be Zoom, Teams, Fuse, Skype, there's so many of them out there. And I really feel like the AV industry has always enabled these platforms to be successful. And we will always continue to do what we do, which is what we do best: cameras, mics, audio, video. And it's going to evolve into a battle royale of the software codec of the month club. You want annotation, you want touchless meetings, you want this, you want that. That's a software feature. It's no longer a hardware feature. So we just have to continue enabling the software codec of the month. We're essentially selling ammunition into the battle.
Wow.
And we're just going to let the software companies continue to improve things. Everybody really likes Zoom right now. They've got a lot in terms of meet happy and usability and user experience, but there could be another company 6 months from now that blows that out of the water. And I am really glad that we all do not have to compete in that space.
Yeah, what's it going to take to get you out of here with that download today? It's going to get pretty intense. Software development right now has got to be going through the roof. There's going to be literally 1,000 Zoom alternatives.
Yeah. I mean, there's gazintas and gazautas. We've got that. It's substantially less. We're not putting matrix switchers in every room and control processors in every room anymore. But if you're still doing that, then you must be from the old school. But there's always going to be a need for the AV industry, and that's the good news. Someone has to extend USB. We're not,
That's a scary statement. If that's a frameable quote, like there's always the need for the AV industry because someone has to extend the USB cable. That just makes me think like we're finished.
I think we're better than that.
Yeah.
But so it sounds like kind of taking the temperature then. Customers are aware of it. Obviously, they are planning around contingencies. They're already knowing whatever they do, they're going to have to spread people out a little bit, maybe have a few more working from home. But Joey says he hasn't seen major projects getting suspended. Randy and Craig, are you seeing major changes in projects that we're moving forward? Redesign requests? What's going on?
It's a changing landscape. A couple of months ago, we saw projects slow down or be put on hold. Different in the public sector than in the private sector. The public sector, particularly higher ed, where we spend a lot of our time, those projects that we're designing today aren't going to open until 2022 or 23. And so they're pretty realistic that we will have fixed this by then. And so we're not changing the designs of those buildings from the way they were anticipated to work in 2019 to what they will look like in 2023, because we're pretty confident that there will be a fix in place. But the corporate side either slowed down or put in place changes to anticipate, at least for the next, call it 12 months, that social distancing that Joey described will have to be in place just to give people less anxiety about going to work, and the corporate parent less anxiety about their people at work. I just got off a hour call with our CEO. We're 3,500 people in 100 offices spread out all over the world, and just had a part of that presentation was our senior health and safety advisor about, if we go back to the office, here's what you can expect, here's what we expect from you. And I would imagine that conversation is going on all throughout corporate America, just to limit liability, quite honestly. So I think the economy, while the reopening is happening across the country in various stages, I'm not sure we've really seen the total impact on the new and renovation construction market quite yet. I'd give it, ask me again in September. I think I have a better picture of what 2021 is going to look like.
Oh yeah, there's two big reasons for it. On the one hand, physical real estate just depreciated by 50%. I mean, you get half as many people per square foot now. But the second thing is we've also proven that, and we don't necessarily need to be in the office. We actually just spent the last 4 months successfully getting it done from home, and a lot of people really love that experience. So, I think we've talked about in the past that at what point does it become a perk that says, look, okay, I'll hire you and I'll pay you this much, and you'll have health benefits, and you can stay home 3 days a week instead of 2 days a week with the other company. Like, yeah. I just can't.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I'm interested in hearing what you're both saying here, especially with Craig, where you're at too. I've been doing a lot of studying in terms of the studies that are out there these days, and it seems as though the mindset has been changing a lot in corporate America in terms of wanting to come back to the office for the socialization. Just saw a study, actually two of them this last week. 50+% of staff that were remote workers 1 to 2 days a week now are looking forward to coming back to the office again because they missed that collaboration. Yeah. What does that mean in terms of business adding or business shutting down? We really have been very fortunate. We haven't really seen much of a slowdown at all. For the 1 or 2 projects that were put on hold, none were canceled, but put on hold. Right. 3 or 4 more have been added, and it's been that reshifting again. Okay, how do we do this now? Projects that were, especially corporate projects that were in development, have gone back to the table and say, okay, how do we address this? And what do we do short term versus long term? Because real estate agents are trying to figure out how they're going to market. As you said, 50% of the market's gone away. It really hasn't shifted, but it's changing substantially in terms of what do we do for the next year or two, and then what is the balance of my lease if it's a 10-year or 15-year lease for corporate America to deal with that. So it's one that really looks at that. In my mind, it says how do we plan for short term versus long term. Right. Long term's easy. That's what we've done and where we've gone.
We fix it. We cure it. Nothing.
Here's a noodle for the pot.
Right.
If you're starting a business today, why would you ever even build a business that would ever require an office to begin with?
Especially when your most inexpensive labor may be international.
Yeah.
We will never ever have a brick and mortar office. We might have a conference center or training center or a mock-up facility somewhere centrally located to service our clients. But I don't see why you do that. It's just overhead. And with all the tools and the ever-evolving battle of the software codec of the month club, I think that the days of companies that already have it, they're going to need to keep going and all that. And perhaps there's a threshold that you will hit where you have to have a headquarters or something like that. But
I think that it's a little, because we are like you, Joey. We're the Sexton Group virtualized to all but one physical office 4 years ago. All of us have worked from home, and we've set it up that way, and we looked at various collaboration platforms to use as our internal corporate standard. But when MD5 acquired us, they were a bricks and mortar organization, typical of a lot of big engineering companies. They have a large group of engineers together. They work on lots of projects. They do a lot of brainstorm collaboration just from sitting near each other. And when I talk to those folks, and they're in the offices, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. They're the closest ones to me are in Raleigh and Charlotte. They're coming back to the office because they miss what Randy said. They miss that interaction and brainstorming and the sort of natural cultural things that happen when you work in a physical space. And I can see the pros and cons of both. I love the quality of life of being able to work from home and not commute. I miss going to see my clients and having that sort of understanding of what their challenges are. And you don't get that, I don't yet, as well over video. I've been writing about collaboration without travel for over 20 years. I wrote it when I worked with Randy at that old firm that I don't talk about anymore, for system contractor
I mean,
news.
Chen,
And you're quoted in it. I went back and looked to see when I wrote Collaboration Without Travel, and said this is the future.
My point was, and I think I probably made it too much about me, which I shouldn't have done, but what if the next Google just says we're never having an office, and they end up having 35,000 employees and they all work from home? There is going to be a demand for collaboration software, and that is when the AV industry is going to be, because they're going to be getting all their stuff from CDW, and it's all going to be built to be, you have a pulse, you can set up this endpoint and do your work, or it's going to be a kit of parts that they ship to all their employees.
Right, exactly. An all-in-one computer with a VPN built in.
Yeah. Now that gets into a whole psychological thing.
One of our devices that we manufacture.
There you go.
Yeah. So let's change gears a little bit. That's, I mean, awesome conversation. That's pretty comprehensive on sort of the state of the state. So let's move back into like, okay, well, we do expect people are going to return at some point to the conference room. Your projects are still moving forward. Let's assume we solve it. But now people are going to have to be able to engage with others online. So I don't disagree in any way, shape, or form that people are getting a little stir crazy and they would love to see other human beings' faces and be in person again. But I still think they're going to want to stay home once a week if they can. Maybe, you know, they like that, being able to, you know, sleep in a little bit or you know, pet the dog during the day. So let's talk about, now we're going to live more in a world where people are coming to the office and some of the teammates won't be there. How do we help customers who struggled with gaining adoption of the technology they've been employing? So a lot of businesses have been installing stuff in conference rooms for decades, but a lot of it doesn't get used, or it doesn't work that well, or a significant portion of the population just doesn't use it. I mean, if I could tell you how many times I come to a conference room or a meeting, and at least 50% of people are bringing pen and paper still. So I'd like to know what's the state of the state on technology adoption, especially now that it's so much more important that people who are coming into the physical conference rooms are going to have to plug in so that they can connect and participate with people who aren't there. Now they have to digitize that meeting experience. Maybe before it could have been completely pen and paper.
Is this the part where we start saying that the office is going to become like a virtual reality video game? And I don't want to say first-person shooter because that would be like way politically incorrect.
There's no
I would
chance
never
to
say
post-produce
first-person
this.
shooter
This
because
is getting streamed
But you
live.
said it twice now.
But you know, we're already designing all these rooms and modeling them in
Second Life
3D,
would be the reference.
and we've got the ability to capture things and show video and do all that. So I think that there's going to be a move towards virtualizing a lot of assets.
Make the virtual experience feel more real, so we still don't have to make it real.
Yeah.
Well, I was asking Joey earlier. I saw a demo last week, or a couple weeks ago now, of a software product called Tritz out of India that is a VR platform for Revit that lets the user walk around in the model and actually move walls and move furniture and change colors and finishes and adjust things as an avatar. And it can be 3D or 2D. So I think we might see a second life of a greater interest in a VR, avatar-based VR as part of the way we interact. And then I say this only because the children, at least Randy and I's children, I'm not sure about Joey's kids because they're probably still little, are massive open online gamers. My son at 35 is still very active in a bunch of different platforms where he has a bunch of different avatars, and he spends a lot of time in that virtual space. He will be a manager in 5 years or 10 years or less of an organization in which that might be his preferred method of interacting with his cohorts and his clients. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a greater growth of VR and AR, but VR as a tool.
So connecting these two thoughts together, you're saying eventually, as we move to this digital universe, if I'm not happy with your performance, I can go video game on you and not actually physically affect you at all. But I can do things like I can snap my fingers and make you just blast into a bunch of
Yeah, but I come back. I have a bunch of lives built up, so I can come back.
Okay.
Yeah, coming back right now.
100% of the rooms that we do now, we model them from the ground up, and little HT base T transmitters all the way to the displays, the projectors, to the bolts on the poles. We're building families to that detail, and every single room we do, there's a virtual reality mock-up that works in a browser in Oculus. And again, this is going to be virtual reality software of the month club. That's going to be another battle royale.
That'll be the next one. So not just collaboration, it's going to be VR software. I mean, the Oculus Quest, I mean, $300, $400.
Yeah.
I can click a button and be anywhere in the world and standing in any immersive environment I want. And the avatar thing is a little kooky right now. But if it was, I mean, you've seen this deep fake stuff where that digital in person, I mean, you can make anybody look and say like anyone else.
This is not actually me.
That's your avatar.
It's my avatar. But
we actually just had to spend some money on purchasing more 3D models of people because in all these sheets that we put out that have these renderings and links to the VR models, we didn't have a diverse enough cross section of people modeled in there, and they were not cheap. So, I think that that industry is on its way.
I want to go back to your core question, though, Michael, was that the disuse or non-use of technology, the people that were bringing paper and pencil to meetings that weren't used to it, the fact that systems have not been updated or upgraded. I just looked at one of my clients' list of the cycle of updates, and their most recent room was updated in 2017. And they have rooms going back more than a decade of technology. So when you see a large organization with this mix of technologies, the user's frustration of, I don't have a VGA connector on my computer anymore. What is this? What do I plug into? Is frustrating. And I know I talked to one corporate client who said, we surveyed 3,000 users of 3,000 conference rooms in our organization. And their biggest frustration was the first 10 minutes of the meeting, of being able to, whoever the presenter was, connecting quickly and effectively to the screen in the room. That's a really sad statement about the AV industry.
Yep, it's a design problem.
Right, well, design or integration problem, because I would bet, much like architecture, is that 10% of the buildings in the world are designed by architects. 90% are designed by contractors. I would be interested if AVIXA would ever do a survey about the ratio of rooms designed by the consulting community versus rooms designed by integrators. With no disrespect to my integrator cohorts out there in the world that might be listening to this, but there is a quick and dirty sell of a hang and bang that we all have been through that gets the job done, but isn't very elegant and isn't very well integrated in that term into lighting or acoustics or size or scale or symmetry or perspective or anything else in the room. That what we do with the architects we work with that makes those rooms better and nicer to work in.
I think one of the things I've been finding with Shenmel Smolke and playing off with Craig and Joey a little bit, this conversation here too, is yes, the room of tomorrow is not going to be the room of today at all. It's a disservice and an injustice if that's the case. But the discussion of the hardware piece of that thing is evolving, or has been evolving, and will continue to evolve. So it's much more a shell of the hardware itself. It's the software, and I think Joy was bringing it up. Okay, it's the piece that gets plugged in and just start downloaded and run with it.
Let's break it open. So we're saying that people are going to be going in the conference rooms again, but we need to design around their needs today and their needs tomorrow. We will see increasing levels of virtual, and software-defined experiences. And we do expect a mixed bag. Some people in the room, some people remote, and fewer people in the room, probably just in general. All right.
For the short term.
What are the essential functions that we need in the new conference room then? Let's talk about it. Yeah.
What about the concept to kind of play off where you're at with it, Michael? I think, but to blow it open even farther, instead of coming to a conference room and having to structure a meeting remotely or virtually or physically, structure a meeting around that conference room. Bring your own meeting. Bring your own profile to that meeting, whether it's virtual, whether it's fixed, whether it's in the UAE, whether it's in downtown Memphis. It doesn't matter what that is, whether it's, again, a physical space or not. Bring your own meeting to it. And now you're into the software domain. You're thinking about that in the software domain in terms of what do I want to accomplish in my meeting versus what does Craig want to accomplish in his. It might be a totally different meeting, totally different agenda to this thing. But the physical and virtual space starts to react to that based on the profile that either of us bring to our own discussion here. Where does that take us? So you're talking about
user credentials. People can come to meeting. So because I asked the question, let's talk about designing the meeting space, and you're saying, well, maybe you don't have to make those decisions. Maybe the meeting space designs itself around the user for the day. Right? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
There's a discussion there. Absolutely. I think there's a discussion there. There's basic tenets of communication and collaboration, basic tenets of that. And that's somewhat hardware based yet. But beyond those core pieces, everything else becomes software. Your PC drives software. Your Oculus is a software driven device. Absolutely. Your audio system is a software driven device. What about your control system? It goes down that same path.
Right.
It virtualizes everything. I didn't mean to throw a wet rag on you guys, but
it's okay. But I want to go back to what I said earlier. Is I think to your core question, if we look at the meeting room of the next year and a half, because I think the time of change is happening. We used to say every 3 years. Now it's every 18 months. That the cycle is changing. Is that they're going to want to be able to connect easily. They're going to be able to see well, want to be able to hear well. They want to look good on camera because they're all on camera because there's a whole bunch of folks. The corporations are going to put out some standard for the home office. Somebody mentioned that. Send a kit to home. They'll pay for better connectivity. I mean, one of our challenges is we have a few staff who live in rural West Virginia, and getting high-speed internet to their house is hard. And so how do we make sure that the speed, everybody on this call has got good bandwidth, so we look good, we sound good.
It's funny though, kid you not, I was trying to work from my home this morning and my internet was just crashing out. And I live in a rural community where I get internet over radio. I actually had to come to the local technical college to visit with my technology friend here, and I'm in a conference room at the local tech college because I couldn't get internet in my own house and participate in the stream. Yeah. But you said something else that made me chuckle. I used to work at ScanSource, a distributor, and a coworker and I were like the two sales people at that local satellite office, and we were the largest distributor for Polycom. And every time we'd get on a video conference, she would choose to sit behind me and keep her head right behind my head because she never wanted to be on camera. And they would always say, "Where's Nora?" And she'd pop her head out and go, "Here I am." And then she'd but you bring up a good point. Okay, so does everyone need to be able to, are we going to force everyone to get on camera now? Do they have to have the technology? Do they have to have the internet access for those who are at home?
If what is effective? It's not to require, but it becomes, are you going to be good at your job, effective at your job? Not so good at your job, effective at your job. You need to be connected, and that's either a personal investment or a corporate investment or institutional investment. And I think it's going to come. And I hate to say it, it sort of creates a haves and haves not scenario for the future of growth as you grow through your organization. Well, because you can't go to that tech college every time you have a meeting, Michael.
Well, maybe I could. It's actually a really nice room. It's
rent some space. They'll have space to rent.
But it's interesting. You bring up a really good point. Like right now, I'm looking at a camera. I'm not looking at the screen. If I look at the screen, you're looking at my chin. So I look at the camera. I've taught myself to look at a lens and talk to you. But that's not intuitive for the average person on video conference. But if you're saying we're going to be judged on our digital presence, our virtual presence, whether we react well on camera, we look good on camera, we behave well, you're right. That is, because this is not normal. I mean, it is for me now to look at a camera instead of the TV. but not for 95% of people going to work.
But that's a learned process. You can be taught that. It only takes a couple of times, especially if you do it with somebody you report to, for you to get to look at that blue light that I'm looking at right now to make sure that I look like I'm paying attention. And I know I just
virtual attendant is at least.
Yeah, exactly. I'm lucky I wear glasses because it sort of masks whether I'm actually looking at the camera or not. But I think I was going to make another point is I think there's also going to be new software tools to both Randy and Joey's point that are, those of you who've seen TeamSpot by Tidebreak, something like that. I just saw Mural as a collaboration tool. Is it new tools for us to work together in ways we had done in an analog way, either on a whiteboard or on sketch paper. But I also, this is my random thought pattern, is that everyone in this room, in the three of us, all are used to working with construction industry collaboration teams. And that's our model. That's the model we know how we work and how those meetings work. Many of our clients work on completely different kinds of projects, product development, software development, consumer services, you name it. There's a whole, it's not just us. And we tend to look at things like a nail. We design conference rooms because we've designed conference rooms all of our lives. And I can't remember, rarely did we talk about a whole lot about who are your clients and who are you designing for. We did, but really it was more on the functional side, not than the business case.
You bring out something I'd like to talk about. I'd like to ask you all a question, actually. So to that end, we have been designing systems around what it does, not why we're doing it. I think across the commercial Pro AV industry for quite some time. And I've had this conversation with various resellers, like, when was the last time, instead of asking them how far back they're going to sit from the wall, or, whether they want projection or TVs, or they're worried about glare or not, have you said, why are you having the meeting? Like, what is the business benefit? Because we don't tether a lot of our collaboration equipment that we're either selling, integrating, designing, installing to the bottom line. What is the point here? Because once we start asking those questions, we actually very quickly dive into workflow. We start talking about, why is this information even coming into this conference room? And then when you start to look at that, then you really realize, like you just said, Greg, there's a lot of other collaborative tools, software defined, that actually could probably accelerate the workflow. Maybe it's not wise to print the paper out and come to the conference room and hand out a docket. Instead, just email that document to that person and they'll auto reply. And then you just save the 30-minute meeting that you've been taking every week to do that.
There's a whole nother discussion on meeting effectiveness and why we have meetings and how many people don't need to be in a meeting.
That's not this panel, is it?
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, I tend to stay away from that, though.
But I think if you look at that from that context, it's changing how we do meetings on electronic meetings as well. So that's going to, and I've already seen some of this take place in the virtual or in the real world. If they're not effective in the virtual world, let's not bring them into the real world. So let's redesign our workflow. And we're seeing a lot of that, because that's where I come at it, the whole discussion that we come at with Shen Smolke is we come at it from the standpoint of, what is your workflow? What are you, Craig's good point, what are you trying to accomplish with your meetings? What are the agendas that you amalgamate over the course of a year? And how do we then apply the technology discussions, whatever that is, to those meetings?
Well, it sounds like you're talking about a new type of design consultant that's designing virtual conference rooms, right? So in our virtual universe, where we're trying to be productive and I need to engage certain people to show different types of content, like Craig brought out, what are the tools that I need to enable that in the virtual room? But Joey seemed to, we cut you off.
Yeah.
You're basically about to say, like, I don't want to touch that conversation. I'm saying maybe that's the destiny of consulting.
You don't want to be viewed as the guy that's coming into the company and telling people how to run their business. If they have questions about what goes on in the meeting room and you can respond to it vis-a-vis the AV portion of it, go there. But
otherwise,
you don't want to be known as that guy that came in and was like, you just don't want to be that guy.
Well, but you live in a part of the country where, everybody's a genius, and so you know,
Well,
They're going to
that's
step on somebody's
But there's
very
lots
big
of those
toes.
parts of
No
in
matter
my
what you
mind.
say.
Part of the problems with what I've seen with consulting over the last year, and I was guilty of it, is that we were perceived and acted as if we were the all know-it-all genius type people. And now we're just concierges and we're here to help. That's it. And we have to be forward thinking. We have to, know what's going to happen in the future in case our clients ask us. But I can't tell a Fortune 500 software company, what they should or shouldn't be doing inside the meeting rooms. I can provide them with the tools to use in those meeting rooms, but that's very slippery slope.
But they're hiring consultants for this. I mean, the Six Sigma and the Black Belt and the Lean, all this. I mean, this is all workflow. And how do we disassociate? Okay, well, here's your workflow, and then there's the technology over here, and these technologists don't have the conversations about that.
I would let the workflow people take the lead on that and listen to what they're saying and try to design something to that. But I wouldn't try to go the other way around. I think workflow is more important.
I'm going to disagree a little. I think you have to be business or institutional knowledgeable. We talk to faculty about pedagogy and how technology supports their goals. We talk about businesses about how does technology support their information or communication flow.
And workflow.
Well, if you know words like pedagogy or whatever that was, then you probably are okay with doing that. But I'm here to help in the technology space, and
well, but I think you can make use case. I had a project, I think, again, back years ago, even in the term before that, Randy, in the early Wilkie days where we worked for American Airlines, during a recessionary period, one of the first growths we saw of video conferencing, and American hired us to look at designing some video conference rooms for them, not for the use of collaboration from between Tulsa and Dallas, but to validate how good is video conferencing versus flying on an airplane. They looked at it as a competitor that they wanted to understand better.
And Wayne House used to do all those reports about how you could save emissions and the mileage, and it was.
Oh yeah.
This brings up a great point. I'm sorry, I would lose it if I didn't go for it right now. But
go for it.
I travel a lot for work, and I'm in these airports, and I see advertisements all over them. San Jose especially, right? And there's the Cisco WebEx advertisement, and it's like, have more effective meetings, be more cost effective, increase ROI. And then I see the advertisements for Zoom, and it says, meet happy. And this right here comes back to the Software Codec of the Month Club and all that stuff. I don't really think it's about ROI and effectiveness and this and that. I think it's about the happiness of your users, your colleagues. All the people that we serve on every project we do are our colleagues in a sense. And what they experience and feel when they use these systems is the single most important thing that we have to aspire to achieve. And AV and tools and equipment and technology in that first 10 minutes and all that, it's all bundled together. But Software Codec of the Month, it's a software thing. And I think the software is going to lead it. And we have to design systems that can be easily addressed via software and be used by any different platform now or in the future.
But to make those people happy, you've got to understand what it is that's going to make them happy, right? I mean, you've got to ask the question.
Money. No.
There you go with the ROI.
How do they get their money faster?
So we only have 6 minutes left, and I've got one more question where I hear this conversation is going, I just think it's worthwhile throwing out there. So what would you say to a business that says, I'm not going to design traditional AV systems in my conference rooms, meeting spaces, huddle spaces anymore. I'm going to put a computer there. Or I'm going to use like an all-in-one appliance, that allows you to bring your own meeting to that space. What would be your counsel? And I mean, are there any gotchas to that? Is it like, let's just do it. Just close it out. Just forget about conference rooms for Pro AV. From now on, it's going to be a Nook. Or, I mean, are there any shortcomings to watch out for if you're going to go that direction?
It goes back to that original comment as are you meeting as a group for a reason? Is there something in the interaction that that group needs that causes them to be happier, to be more effective, to know when they walked out of that meeting that they accomplished what they were trying to do, that is better served by being together or connected to remote folks in some other location? Or is it just simply you and I having a call where, Michael, if I'm making a proposition or proposal to you, that I can judge by your reaction to my presentation because I can see your face.
We're using the temperature sensors when you show me the
well, less than that, the mood ring, more the mood ring, is that are you reacting positively to what I am saying or not? It's really that it's that first 30 seconds of watching the reaction of someone when you meet them or when you talk to them or you present something to them. Are they accepting what you're saying as truth, or are they questioning it, or are they really pissed off about it?
How do you, I don't know how you judge that.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, but it goes to the story of your question. Is there's no simple answer to your question. It's not one or the other. It depends on your use case, and you have to ask those questions. That's what a consultant is there for. And we have to have a toolkit of answers to say, in that scenario, this is what I would recommend, and this is why.
People are going to meet.
For me, Michael, it's if they say we want to do a PC or a hardware thing, we say yes, sounds great. Because I've noticed in the last 3 years is that the AV engineering people within the companies that we work for have done all that work already, and they're just looking for help to get the projects done. And if they ask for our opinion or advice or counsel, or they want us to test or prove something, then we'll do that work as well. It's just another project. But, you know, it's 80% PC, 20% hardware at this point. You know,
pretty close. But people are going to continue to meet. It's just the format of that discussion and what, as Joey said, what makes them happy.
They all want to go PC, but they can't because there's long-standing ties with the hardware companies that make the hardware presently, and severing those is a little bit of a Band-Aid peel, you know. But
well, and the whole pro AV industry has been talking about AV as a service and how do we develop this and how do we move to that. But when AV is a computer managed by the network administrators of the end user, I don't know where you build a service model around that unless the USB extender fails.
Right.
And so
I'd rather service a USB extender than a PC.
Yeah. Good point.
Well, gentlemen, I mean, this has been, I mean, pretty eye-opening. I think it's really great. And I'll just say this, I can't wait for Apple glasses to show up where everything's in augmented reality. I can see whatever I want to see, wherever I want to see it. I can hear you. I can see your presentation. I can pinch and zoom it in open air. And it's all just, you know, 5G LTE, so I don't need physical spaces. But I have to work on my avatar. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. If I'm going to go with, you know, a talking animal or what.
Maverick.
So
put Maverick on for the avatar.
I go with Maverick. Well, gentlemen, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for joining us. I know our audience is.
Thanks for the invite, Michael.
I mean, to have this amazing panel together, having just an open conversation, you just don't see this very often. So.
Michael, great work putting this together. Thank you.
Yeah, glad to be part of it. Thank you.
I look forward to hearing the feedback from the whole Wolf Vision presentation. That was quite an endeavor that you guys put together. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're just like what we're looking to do in the conference room. We need to create new types of ways of collaborating. Now that the world has to attend conferences online all day. So thank you so much. Stay tuned for more great content here in the VCX conference, and we'll see you soon on another session.
Thanks.
Thanks again.